Hey, what's up?
Yeah, well, yeah, I finished all. I sorted out that mystery downstairs. So,
What was that
uh,
about?
I don't know. Someone just left their car in the middle of the driveway, and there's no key. The doors are unlocked, so we just ended up pushing it out of the way just so we can get through. And
Right.
yeah, that was strange.
That's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah, so for everyone listening at home, I'm your host, Edge, also known as Thomas of Full Time Fans, and here with me again is Great Grabthar's Hammer. And actually, last time we forgot to plug your blog.
yes.
Where can we
So
find you?
So at the moment, I'm only on Facebook right now. So
Ooh, that's going to put some
it'll-
people off.
yeah, I know. I'm still trying to find a decent find time to sort out a blog page. But for now, so you'll find me at by Grabthar Hammer, just another review blog.
And we'll also put
And
that in the description below. We'll put a link to that.
sure, no problem. That's no problem at all.
And I would highly recommend checking it out, guys, because like honestly, like I always there's a lot of people who like to do reviews and a lot of it just can feel like white noise and repetitive stuff. I feel like you try to put a little something more into your reviews, which is why I've always asked you to come on because I feel
Yeah.
like you go the extra mile and you try to put a little something extra in. So I'd highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, well, I've always felt whenever I write these reviews, like it, I have to put. I usually put a lot of myself when I write these reviews. I usually start off with, yeah. When you read these reviews, you end up learning a little bit more about me as much as you know about my opinion of the movie, and it's with certain movies. Sometimes I'll just strike like I don't see. I'm a bit picky about what I review because everyone else is going to be like I don't really review the major blockbuster tentpole films because every man and his dog has already said their opinion on that. But
Right,
the other
yeah.
reason,
They're all reviewing the big stuff.
yeah, exactly. But the other thing is that a lot of the times while I enjoy those movies, there's there's nothing that sort of there's an element there's no element that latches onto me that'll keep me sort of invested. So I think one of the earlier things I wrote was the Ron Howard film Parenthood, as starring Steve Martin and Mary Steenburgen and Rick Moranis. And I that's a movie I could sort of appreciate on different levels because I'm a parent myself.
Right.
And that just sort, especially Steve Martin's character, his paranoid, his sort of neurotic behavior really spoke to me, and there were so many things I can relate to on that level, and in terms of his character.
So it's almost
yeah,
like when you're doing a review, you want to put a little piece of yourself in there too.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
I want
interesting.
people, I want to show like I want to show people if I'm going to show people how what my thoughts on a movie, I want them to show how it really connects to me or how it failed to connect to me. So I can easily just talk about what was good, what was bad, and all that. But I think to understand why I have those feelings, that's why I tend to sort of open myself up a bit in these reviews. So
Right.
yeah, I'm glad that you've enjoyed them,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I hope that one day that I'll eventually get around to setting up a proper blog page and
Yeah.
transferring all those reviews to that blog page for a much wider audience to see and read at their own leisure.
Who knows, if you get enough views on your thing, you could even be a Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes official person. Which, I mean, I think everyone will want to throw Rotten Tomatoes at you, because there's always the guy who's like, you're being paid by Disney.
I've got a bit of a love-hate thing with Rotten Tomatoes at this point, but I'm still pretty defensive in terms of how things are carried out. But I'll just leave it at that.
I'm a more Metacritic guy myself, to be honest. I rarely find myself in Rotten Tomatoes. Anyway, to get more to the meat of the discussion of what we're talking today, we're talking about Disney again. Because the other thing we did was so well received. I think a lot of people had a lot of contention with it, and I on the thread where we posted it, I really didn't find any good arguments. There was a couple criticisms of the format that we did, and I can agree with that. I mean, it wasn't the best podcast, in the world, but I think there was only one person who actually had some story critiques of it, but you had another hot take, I guess, and I'll let you explain it, because I'm not sure if I fully agree or if I fully disagree, so I'll kind of let you get into it.
Yeah, so this is going to be pretty controversial for a lot of people in the Disney fandom. Now, there's two films that I find get back, and I think rightly so, that get a lot of love, and it's Atlantis: The Lost Empire and Treasure Planet.
Oh man, I love both those films.
Yeah, those. I tell you what, I prefer Atlantis slightly over Treasure Planet. But just slightly, like a 0.1%.
Okay, that's fair.
Over. That's fair. Yeah. I was blown away by it. But as I look back on those two films and the sort of, I really appreciate the cult following that these two films have, because they are somewhat underappreciated.
And Treasure Planet totally bombed on release as well.
Oh yeah, that film effectively killed the traditional 2D animation look for Disney. That was like sealed the deal for them.
Right, and might I add, the same two people who worked on it worked on another piece of animation that almost killed Disney animation, and that was The Black Cauldron.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yep, it's the same two guys. It was actually one of their passion projects. I will recommend anyone, I'll put this in the description too, there's a video by a YouTuber named Breadsword, and he does a whole, basically, half-hour documentary on how Treasure Planet got made. But anyway, after they made The Black Cauldron, they were like, we want to do Treasure Planet in space. And they were like, no, you just, screwed us with this Black Cauldron thing. And every subsequent film they released that was popular, they always said afterward, we want to do Treasure Planet in space. And finally, they were like, fine, you can do it. But anyway, continue with what you were saying.
Okay. So, now we're in this new era of Disney film, the Disney revival, as it's been called. And again, to go back to the point that we were trying to make in our first discussion, Tangled may have sort of got its foot in the door, but it was Frozen that really signaled that Disney was back.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Now, in the subsequent years,
whether you like the film or not, you have to agree with that point that we're making.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's like that. It's a good. I'm not telling you that this is definitively a good film or something like that. I'm just trying to say you got to admit this is the film that put Disney back on the map.
Right.
But in saying that, and then again in our first discussion, which was sort of addressing the backlash against Frozen,
Right.
and then the various examples that keep getting brought up. The two examples that for some reason stick in my mind are Treasure Planet and Atlantis: The Lost Empire. And then the more I look into it, and I started thinking to myself, well, why weren't these two films as popular as they could have been?
Right.
That was sort of the beginning of my my questioning. I mean, I know that again, those two films are excellent films, and the fan base is very, very, very absolutely passionate. But what was it about those? Oh yes, but what was it about these two films? What was missing about these two films in general that even after all these years, I don't feel that the reception to those two films is as good as the fan communities want it to be. See, I go to the example of The Iron Giant, which was made around the same time as those films. Again, when that was made, it was and when it got released, that film totally bombed. But in the years after that, not only did it
gain a cult following.
It had a cult following, of course, yeah. But then I think it was would have been like 10. What was the recent anniversary? 20.
Let me see.
It was a recent milestone.
Let's see.
I got the Blu-ray for that as well.
It was Iron Giant anniversary. I'm not sure. I know they came with a collector's edition.
Yeah,
That's it.
I know that Brad Bird got his fans to tweet to Warner Brothers.
20th. It was the 20th.
It was the 20th anniversary.
20th
okay,
anniversary.
So it's around the same time as Treasure Planet and Atlantis. But so it's saying that it had a similar start, but when you look at the Iron Giant now, I could see not only people sort of falling, like the same people falling in love with it, but like as an acknowledgement of how great this film was and how poorly handled it was, but it's sort of, I believe it's received the recognition that it deserves because it's such a great film.
Right.
And I love that. I love The Iron Giant. That's like the top 5 animated films for me.
Yeah.
The Iron Giant.
And I think the reception to it is it's a lot more popular than Treasure Planet or especially Atlantis. It's a lot more popular than that for sure.
Yeah. And so looking at those films, the Iron Giant's a lot more warmly looked back on, and I reckon, and especially in regards to the story. But then when I look at Atlantis and Treasure Planet, I could see that there were things that they were trying to do, but something just felt off. And then when I was watching the documentaries, I think it was specifically Atlantis: Lost Empire, there was this whole drive at the time and I think this is sort of and I think this drive was probably a big reason as to why these films aren't as memorable as they could have been. And I remember the directors talking about how they wanted to go away from what Disney was traditionally known for, because at that time people were sort of over the whole Disney animated musical thing.
Right.
So I think it was one of the directors of Atlantis and said we're trying to we're getting away from all
Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale.
Yeah. So they were saying we're doing a new thing. We're getting away from what basically we're not doing a Disney film.
Right.
We're not doing a typical Disney film. We're not doing something, and which by what they meant was we're not doing another animated princess musical, and there was the same kind of philosophy for Treasure Planet. And what I felt was...
Yeah, they were released within, to kind of cement your point here, those films were released a year after each other. With
That's
Atlantis
right,
coming out in 2001 and Treasure Planet coming out in 2002, the next year.
2002, yeah. And then I think for some reason Dinosaurs was also... I wouldn't call it a trilogy, but there was sort of a thematic vein that those three films shared. I mean, they all shared the same composer for one thing, but there was something
that was released the year before Atlantis.
That's right. 2000. Yeah, I remember that movie, Dinosaur. Yeah, I remember seeing that one in theaters as well.
I didn't even know that was made by Disney. Wow.
It was a Disney film. Yeah, it was that period where they wanted to do new things, but it felt like the main focus was concentrating on trying not to be like a Disney film.
Right.
It's like, whereas they should have decided on doing, what's the best thing that we can do, which is a different thing. And that's why I sort of felt that because they spent so much time worrying about trying to avoid being like something, they didn't put the effort into making a good story. Now with the Iron Giant, they had nothing to worry about. All Brad Bird had to do was concentrate and on making the best story he could. Especially with Atlantis and Treasure Planet, their mindset from the beginning was, we don't want this to be like a typical Disney film. We got to try and avoid doing that. Now, there's that whole thing. Oh no, that analogy doesn't work. But you get what I mean. You get what I mean, right?
I think there's an interesting thing to be said about, I don't want to speak too much for the directors of Treasure Planet, but the first feature film that Disney came out with that was animation was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that worked really well. And then I'm not really sure when the Black Cauldron came out in retrospect to that, but it was afterward. And, I feel like instead of kind of taking what worked about that film and making something new, they had this vision of we want to do this thing. It's different from this. And the Black Cauldron, it wasn't as good because of that. And the same thing goes for Treasure Planet. I mean, being that it came out, in the 2000s year where Disney was trying to change, that there was that push to kind of avoid some of the Disney tropes, when some of those Disney tropes are great.
And with it just felt like if they had put more effort in just trying to make a good story and not worry about whether or not they were, bringing in, crossing over into those classic tropes, I reckon the stories and the characters would have come out written a lot better. Because in regards to Treasure Planet,
Right. Like, do you have an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh,
Because people are undoubtedly going to ask for examples.
Okay, sure. I have a bit of an issue with the tone of Treasure Planet. How can I pin this down? I know a lot of people like Jim Hawkins.
Yes.
How he was portrayed.
Yeah.
I know
right.
that, and there's sort of the idea of his father ran off.
Right, which is a departure from the source material.
Exactly, yeah. His father ran off, and he's like pretty much a delinquent teenager.
Right, he's angsty.
But he's angsty. Now, I don't mind angsty per se, but Disney writers at that time couldn't do angsty. It just felt more. It didn't feel as much angsty as it was sort of pouty. If you get my drift,
into some Anakin territory for you.
Yeah. And then there was sort of then you got those odd pop culture, all those odd cultural zeitgeist moments of the bit where Dilbert gets excited to go on this trip, and he's like, "Go Dilbert, go Dilbert." It's like, and then the character of Ben by Martin Short, he's a bit take or leave with
right.
me.
You know, that's an interesting thing. There was the Breadsword video I mentioned earlier. He was pretty anti-Ben. Like,
do you think the thing with Ben was this thing where they were trying to replicate the genie character that they set up in Aladdin?
Right. I think it's not just the genie character. I think if you look at a lot of Disney films, there is kind of that there's always that character. You know, whenever it's like they can't lean into a serious thing without having something goofy. Like even in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you know, there's this guy who's gonna burn down all of Paris, and you got I'm losing to a bird. You know, it's like you always got that crazy goofy guy. But you know, it's interesting. I don't know. I honestly don't know what went wrong with Ben. It sticks out like a sore thumb though.
I mean the whole with all the I'd assume most of it was ad-libbed. Right. It just sort of again tonally it just felt really weird and out of place. And again how and going back to Jim as well. I mean I understand what they were trying to do with him. But it just sort of, again, it didn't feel like proper adolescent angst as much as it was. You know, this was more, you know, I think they were trying to go for like, what do you call it? Oh, who's that famous actor now? Who's the guy? I think they were trying to go for Jimmy Dean.
James Dean. In fact,
they were trying to.
If you look at his clothes that he wears at the beginning of the film, it's like screams James Dean.
Yeah, like they were trying to go James Dean, but his actual portrayal was just sort of, you know, a 90s teenager.
Right.
It was, but you know what I mean. Like you see. In James Dean, when he in his films, when he's showing that anger and emotion, like, you know, that's just, you can see the rawness in it. It feels genuine. But when you look at Jim Hawkins, I I'm not. He's trying to channel that, but I think the writing really lets it down. Lets him down.
Right.
In terms of probably the combination of the writing and direction. I mean, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a pretty great actor, even at that.
Right.
Even at that time, he was a great actor.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah. Yeah.
The premise here is essentially that because it was such a departure from classic Disney, it was its downfall. So what do you think could have been done differently if they weren't so worried about avoiding that altogether? Because that's the real test of the theory, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I know. And that's something I'm still sort of still trying to think my way through.
Right.
It's more of like more of a hypothesis, but it's just something that I've noticed that again when I was watching those documentaries, we want to try and get away from doing this. We want to do something new. It's like could that have actually hampered how those films turned out? So to imagine what it would be like if they didn't worry about that, I'm not too sure, but I reckon that they would have been received a lot more. You know how it's a bit hard to describe. It's like sometimes you watch a film, and you know that there's an element in it that says, okay, that's a Disney movie, you know, or you go to you look at a Pixar film. That's a Pixar film, you know. There's just that intangible element that it's hard for me to pinpoint.
I think it's interesting to go back to Frozen here for a second because in our last podcast we talked a little bit about how Frozen embraced that classic Disney, but also wasn't afraid to subvert some tropes. Now, I think there's a key thing that could have been done that these films we're talking about, Atlantis and Treasure Planet, could have learned from, because there's a lot of trope subverting in the film, and some of it's really amazing, and it's to the film's credit. But other things, as we're talking about, is to the film's detriment. So perhaps if they weren't so afraid to be so anti Disney, they could have kept that Disney magic while bringing something new to the table. I think that's an interesting thing that you might have going here, because when you discount yourself creatively over fear of how someone will react to something, it can be a bad thing. That's
right. Yeah, you might. Yeah, it ends up working against you.
Right. Because
then you're worrying about two different things at the same time. You don't realize it, but you're doubling your workload, essentially. But if you just go straight for doing the best thing you can do, and to hell with whether or not you pick up some of those classic tropes along the way, as long as the overall package is still a good package.
Right.
You're not gonna. People aren't gonna begrudge you because it was a great story.
Right.
And that's why I bring up the Iron Giant. Because they didn't really have any sort of legacy per se to avoid being like. Brad Bird just wanted to make an excellent movie,
right?
And that's why I feel after all these years, the Iron Giant has aged more favorably compared to Atlantis,
right? And that's a good point,
Treasure
because
Planet.
You bring up the '90s angst. It's very much a period of that time. We can look fondly back on that because it came out in the early 2000s. I mean, that was pretty much the spillover from the '90s. We can look favorably on it, but in the same time, we may recognize that this kind of hasn't aged the best. But
it's of its time. You can sort of see
Right.
the elements that are of its time.
Right, and the Iron Giant, it doesn't really try to do that necessarily,
Yeah.
and the interesting thing about that, there's a lot of filmmakers who try to essentially capture that timelessness too. Some of it may be on purpose. Like, for example, the film Labyrinth. Have you ever seen the film Labyrinth?
I have seen it in its entirety once, and then I've caught bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
Right. I'm a huge Jim Henson fan, so I am crazy into anything Jim Henson. But I was watching the commentary on it. Some of the guy who was really involved in the design element of it, he was pointing out most of it takes place in the labyrinth, in a fantasy world, so you don't have to worry about anything aging there because it's its own thing. But the beginning of the film actually does take place in the real world, and I believe, what's her name?
That's right.
Liv Tyler, right? That's her name, right?
No, it's Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly. I don't know why I said Liv Tyler. Yeah, Jennifer Connelly. Yeah, she is the clothes she's wearing. The streets they show. Everything in the film. The director said we wanted to make it quirky, but we wanted to make it something that wasn't too reflective of the time period as well. So when you watch that movie, it doesn't feel too out of place, and that's on purpose because they wanted to capture that timelessness. So I think it's an interesting thing as well.
Yeah, that's such a hard thing, to make something feel timeless, even when it's made a product of its era.
Right.
And that's another thing, a strike I have against Treasure Planet, in that it feels like a product of its time. And I mean, the story itself is a timeless story.
Right.
But the way it was executed just felt like a product of that time that it was made in. Like, it was a sort of a cynical time where it was pretty much a personification of what they were trying to do with Jim. It was he's an angsty teenager that didn't want to conform to the world, and that was how 90s angst was seen anyway.
Right.
But because of that, it just sort of it doesn't transcend the period it was made in. It's like, oh, okay, this is just a product of the late 90s, early 2000s, as opposed to something like Labyrinth, where it feels like, it doesn't matter
where it is,
when it was made, where it is, or when it's set.
Right.
It's something that can be enjoyed at any point in time without being bogged down by the time it was made in.
Right. Speaking of this, I think I would like to turn the conversation a little bit here. Because speaking about things that are really a product of their time, Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Yes.
I really want to get your thoughts on this, because I know we were having a conversation, and you at first said you thought it was a fine film, but recently you said you kind of are having some more problems with it, and I haven't seen the film personally. I don't really care about spoilers, to be honest. I just like to pick your brain about what are your general thoughts on the film.
Okay, so it was funny that the first time we had our last talk was when I went to watch Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, and again, like you said, it was a fine film. I wasn't expecting it to be better than the first film, because that first film was great.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's okay. But then it just started over these last couple of months, over these last 3 months. The more I looked into it, it's like, the more frustrated I became. And then I think my review I did sort of sums up, or it doesn't really. I don't think it even sums up how frustrated I am with it right now. Because for me, it felt like it was the betrayal of what Ralph went through in the first film.
There's been a lot of talk about that they just retreaded the same character arc, right?
Yeah, but not only that, it made Ralph look almost irredeemable. Whereas in the first film, like he was a bad guy, but he wasn't an idiot.
Right.
Like everything even when he did wreck stuff, he never really went around on a wreck. He never really went around stupidly wrecking things. Whereas in this movie, he's a complete imbecile, and everything he does makes things worse to the point where, spoilers, he becomes the source of a virus that takes over the internet because the virus latched onto its insecurities. And the whole thing with the virus was that it would latch onto the most negative emotions of whatever was in the vicinity, the strongest negative emotions. And it just so happened that Ralph was there. He was really feeling really insecure about Vanellope's success, and then the virus multiplied itself and becomes this big Godzilla Ralph monster thingy that takes over the internet. And that was probably the major issue I had, because we had Ralph learned his lesson from the last film. So sometimes you don't get what you want, and that's all right.
Right.
And Ralph came to acceptance of that. And then I would have thought, sure, it might have been treading similar ground, but the story then becomes Vanellope wants to get what she wants, and then you'd think, okay, maybe she got to learn that sometimes she can't get what she wants, because Vanellope wants to leave the arcade and stay online in that online racing game, Slaughter Race.
Right. So maybe they were going to flip their character arcs a little bit, just do it.
Exactly. It's like, oh, okay, then Vanellope's the one that needs to learn the lesson.
Right.
But instead of that, she gets what she wants.
Oh, what?
Yeah. She again, spoilers, but she actually got what she wanted to have. She leaves the arcade and ends up staying in the online game. So, and I thought, isn't that kind of a bit of a slap in the face to what Ralph had to go through?
Right.
I mean, I know it's like, I didn't say you never get what you want. I said sometimes you don't get what you want.
Right.
And it should be fine with that. But I guess they were trying to concentrate on Ralph trying to get over Vanellope having her own interests and stuff. But the way it was handled, it was really, it really made Ralph. I wouldn't even say that it made Ralph into the villain. It just made him into an idiot.
Right.
I like it.
Man, that's kind of frustrating, because like it kind of seems like a big missed opportunity there to essentially flip their story arc. Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, what's the point of having a sequel? We're just going to retread the character's story arcs." Having it flip like that would be a kind of a cool idea. Yeah. But no, you just kind of squander it. It's like, what?
Yeah, because it's a similar exploration, the characters are different. Vanellope's going to react in a different way than Ralph would have reacted to his crisis.
Yeah,
because they're both going pretty much with a similar thing. Ralph wanted to be the hero, even though he was a bad guy, or Vanellope wants to be in Slaughter Race, even though because she's sick of racing around in Sugar Rush.
Right.
But 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 Ralph came to understand it was okay for him to not get what he wanted to have. But then with Vanellope, it's like, oh, that's okay. She can get what she wants, and Ralph just has to deal with Vanellope getting what she wants.
Yeah, and it makes him have to basically be the center of the story again. You know, it's like,
yeah. Well, here's the thing with Ralph as well. Like, Ralph was just sort of the butt of all the jokes. Like,
right.
Narratively speaking, all I felt he was doing was just going around the internet and doing stupid things to make the situation harder. The funny, making fun of internet memes because he wanted to like get all the likes that he needed to help get that part that they needed in the arcade, but that sort of went by the wayside.
Right.
And yeah.
So I wonder if they would have just marketed this instead, if we're gonna try to make the movie better, as a Vanellope movie instead,
It should the movie might have been better served as being about Vanellope, because at least then they don't have to worry about, well, what are we gonna have Ralph do?
Right.
Because this was essentially Vanellope's journey, but it's still, but because Ralph is still supposed to be the lead character,
yeah,
I think they were really clutching at straws of, okay, what can we get Ralph to do?
It's kind of a Finding Dory situation,
Yeah, but at least with Finding Dory, they knew to make Dory the concentrated.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
Dory
it would have been benefit. Yeah. It's almost like if they would have tried to do like Finding Nemo 2 and kind of have Dory doing her own thing. It's like that wouldn't work. That's weird. It's better to flip the script, right. To flip the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should have. Yeah, it should have. I don't know what they would have called it. Although, and again, it's saying that there were still elements I liked about the movie. I mean,
I've heard a lot of people say the
princess
princess scene is really fun.
The princess thing is the only thing I found redeemable about it.
I might just watch that scene.
Yeah, just watch the two scenes that they show up in, like when Vanellope first meets them. And then during the end of the climax where they end up helping Ralph, I actually quite like the climax bit because of the composer, I believe it's Henry Jackman. He managed to integrate all the princess's musical motifs into this piece. So Elsa and Anna show up, and he introduced their motifs from Frozen, and Mulan was there, and he introduced the motifs from Mulan, and Ariel, and all the princes that get involved. I thought, musically speaking, that was a pretty great scene.
Man, I have to just find that on the soundtrack, so you can just listen to that too.
Yeah, you'd have to find. Yeah, I believe it's Henry Jackman who did that.
That's so good.
But yeah, that was good.
I like this. I like the Scottish joke they did in that. Where the what's her name tries to talk
with Merida, yeah, because Merida from Brave, and it was like Penelope's like, what is she saying? It's like, and one of them goes, we don't know. She's from the other studio.
It's great. It's great. It's great.
It's a nice little. There's a ton of in jokes and stuff, and most of them are pretty good. But and the way the world is set out it makes it look it's logical. Like it makes it look like a functioning. Okay, this is how the internet would work if it was visualized like that.
A lot better than the Emoji Movie.
A lot better than the Emoji Movie. Like legit. Like if there's one thing that people need to know about me, I'm a big nerd for logistics. Like I I like knowing all the minutia of every. Like, I like if your listeners out there are familiar with the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion, a huge part of that mecha series is it's not the action that interests me, but it's the preparation build up for the action. So they actually go through like every single detail that they, okay, we need this here. What parts do we need? And it's sort of the build up to the actual event. And I love all that kind of minutia. And Wreck-It Ralph 2 has that similar thing of like it has all those small details that make it count, that makes it feel like, okay, this actually makes it look plausible that this works that way. It's just such a disappointment that the way the story was handled for me, it was just so botched. It was just so botched, and again, like the more I think about it, the more and more frustrated I get. And like I've had the response of, "Oh, why don't you just turn off your brain?"
Oh my goodness!
And to be honest, I don't like the whole turn off your brain thing. It's like I'm more of a suspension of disbelief guy. So it's like, okay, sure, there's things that, like, and just for the people listening, if you don't understand what I'm trying to get at, what I'm trying to say is, I'm actually very accepting of how a movie works, as long as the rules, as long as it plays by its own rules that it sets.
Exactly.
It's like you're playing a game with somebody, like you're playing a game of chess with somebody, or a board game or whatever, and then there's a set of rules.
Yeah.
But then the person you're playing with breaks those rules, and then it just sort of ruins the experience. Well, that's what I mean by suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is the acceptance of the rules that the story or the movie sets up. It's not about turning off your brain. It's an acceptance of what's been established. And as long as what you watch sort of conform, even though it might look ridiculous, as long as it sort of makes sense in this world that they're building, then that's completely fine.
Oh yeah.
But a
good example of that I can think of. I remember watching Attack of the Clones, and Anakin loses his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan gives it back and says, "This weapon is your life." And I remember back to what Yoda's saying. I'm like, hold on a second. Yoda was like, "No, weapons are, you don't need those. Your weapons, you will not need them in there, And I'm like, what? It's not, Star Wars is not following its own rules. I kind of got taken out of it.
Yeah. Although I think with Star Wars is slightly a bit more forgiving in those terms. But I get the what you're trying to say. Like when Yoda said that in Empire Strikes Back. And I guess context kind of matters too, but I get what you're saying.
Another thing I want to talk about in relation to just really quickly, because I think we should close up here in a bit, but the whole fiasco about the marketing of Wreck-It Ralph, the DVD and Blu-ray release. You have one sticker on there that says nominated, because I actually looked at the kiosk, because I work at Best Buy, and they have the kiosk set up. One of them, at first glance I was like, okay, nominated, yes, it was nominated, that's fair.
That's
then
true.
I looked down and I'm like, winner. Hold on, whoa, you didn't win nothing.
To be honest, I don't think they should have even been nominated.
No, I mean, like, you got something like Isle of Dogs. That's totally fair, But
yeah, they really. jumping the gun is an understatement. It's like, I mean, they were intentionally printing out. They must have printed out thousands of these, signs ready to go when the announcement was made, and and they assumed, oh, it's a Disney film. It's going to win anyway.
Right. Yeah.
but the funny thing is, like, of the two films under the Disney banner, they went for Wreck-It Ralph 2 and not The Incredibles.
Right.
I mean, I know people have their issues with The Incredibles,
right? But I mean, certainly
The
much
Incredibles
better than Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, that was a much superior film.
Yeah.
To Wreck-It Ralph 2, and I was just thinking, why were you if you're gonna err on pushing one film, at least go for the one that was actually a bit better.
Yeah.
Because if people just I think if they made that mistake with The Incredibles, even though The Incredibles have been out on home release for about 2 months now, but which is probably why they wouldn't do it with The Incredibles.
Right.
But,
I feel people they'd be more forgiving. They might not even notice,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, well, it was a pretty decent film. But with Wreck-It Ralph, I mean, I don't think there was anything that even warranted Disney being.
It's so shocking
preparing
to
themselves.
see award winner on a Wreck-It Ralph kiosk. It's like, what? Yeah. Hold up. It's like taking a dog turd and saying, like, best art exhibit. It's like, what?
Yeah, what, did you not get the memo? It's like, and it's funny because the announcement was made, but I guess some of the poor suckers in these retail places still have to put the signs up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we got thousands of these signs. People aren't going to notice anyway.
It's like, no. But Spider-Verse clearly deserves the win.
Spidey was the one that was most worthy of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Like,
most definitely.
Because, like, the animation in that, it's interesting, to take the animation in that, because a lot of people think that the sole decision to make I don't know how to call it, it's not fluid animation, it's kind of a little bit jarring, a little bit.
It's not how you'd see, like, in a traditional 3D animated film, the movement is much more fluid because they ostensibly want to try and recreate reality.
Right.
But with the art style in this one, I think it's like that decision to remove those frames in between the movements. I guess sort of they're trying to lend itself to its comic book origin.
Yeah, it's actually a twofold. And one kind of bursts itself out of the other, because after the Emoji Movie, I heard that Sony didn't want to spend a lot of money on an animated feature, so that animation style was actually done out of the money, but out of that restriction came this idea to have the characters snap into poses, into kind of comic book poses. So I always think that's interesting about out of a restriction comes art,
Yeah, well, that's very similar to how how Japanese animation started, in terms of when it first started in the I think the 40s or the 50s, because they saw the fluidity of the Disney shorts that were being made at the time, and the Disney films, and they were like, oh, we want to do this, but we can't afford to invest in all this, in the high cell count that the fluidity is gonna the fluidity of the animation requires. So they ended up, I forgot how many frames, how many cells a second that they, instead of the high cell count that that American animation used, they sort of cut that in half, and then that's allowed them to stretch their budgets a bit more, and then that sort of created the style itself.
Yeah.
But I see what they did with Spider-Man, very reminiscent of what the anime industry had to deal with at the time to sort of save money on the budget and stretch their creativity a bit. And like you said, it's created it's unintentionally created its own art style. And but in saying that, I don't know if that be replicated everywhere. I reckon unless the story calls for it. See, I don't know how your thoughts on this, but I think it works really well to benefit Spider-Verse.
Oh,
but I don't know. Yeah,
it wouldn't do.
Yeah,
it's not good for everything, for sure.
Yeah.
But another thing that really drew me to the animation too was there's a lot of times where like somebody's like using a flashlight or something like that, or you can actually see the comic like dots.
That's right.
Blew
Yeah.
my mind. I was like, whoa! Like this is actually like a comic book.
Yeah. Well, the art, the guys in charge of the art department, they really deserve.
Oh yeah.
So much. They deserve so much credit.
Not only that, not only just the overall aesthetic of the film, but that each Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, Spider-People, as they constantly say in the film, has their own unique style of animation too.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I mean, to have the Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker from the anime style, and then Spider-Ham.
Yeah.
As like you got three distinct styles there already.
Yeah.
And they managed to integrate those three distinct styles into this one film.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just thinking for the inevitable sequel that's coming out, man, if they don't somehow, I would piss myself laughing if they found a way to integrate Spider-Man
from the meme. I mean, I guess it's possible.
from the Berlin Duck meme.
Right.
Like if they can do Spider-Ham, I think somehow they're gonna try and do Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, please.
That's your pick. Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Spider-Man into the Spider-Man in the sequel. If you can do Spider-Ham, you can do Spider-Man.
For sure. I think that, in my opinion, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite Spider-Man films of all time.
Oh, yes.
It just captures the essence of the character, the idea that anyone can be Spider-Man. Like,
that's right.
That was what really hit out for me. But like, out of all the films, I always said that Homecoming was my favorite. But I didn't really have much to compare it to. I mean, what am I going to compare it to? The Andrew Garfield movie? I mean, come on.
Yeah, or the Sam Raimi films.
The Sam Raimi films are good, but they're not amazing like everyone has them to be, which might be a topic for another time, not today.
Probably, yeah.
Because there's a lot of Raimi fans out there that'll. Might I say, even more passionate than the people who will jump down the Frozen throat. If you say Frozen was a good film.
Oh yeah.
Raimi fans much more so.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mind the Raimi films. Again, I feel like they really helped open the door for that kind of spectacle.
For sure.
It's especially that. Yeah. So they really helped with the films, but. With this current, influx of superhero genre, but at the same time, there are those issues that you sort of have to look back at. They sort of hold the films back from being greater than they really than it ought to be.
Kind of like Treasure Planet.
And I think, exactly, for different reasons.
For different reasons, but
but. It's like, those limitations that hold these films back that you know that they deserve the respect that they deserve more respect than they initially received. But you can see the reasons why. When you stand back and look at it objectively, you could sort of see, and you have to be objective about this because you can't just sort of you can't you can still be a fan and still be objectively critical about its
That's
issues.
my biggest thing.
You look,
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
So that's why I can say, look, I loved Atlantis and Treasure Planet, and especially the art style of Atlantis: Lost Empire, and I love the score by James Newton Howard.
Yeah.
Or James Newton Howard?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Anyway,
if you watch that Breadsword documentary on YouTube of it, they definitely bring him up a couple times. But yeah, you can love it. Yeah, you can love it, but you can still acknowledge.
You cannot. Yeah, and I think that's a skill that a lot of people in fandom have sort of. It's like you got to be all in,
or all out,
or you hate it.
You hate it or you love it. It's like no, it's in between.
But isn't it? Yeah, it's all nuances. Nothing's perfect.
Nothing is perfect.
You can still love. You can still like something, and look back and say, but and I acknowledge these issues, but they don't affect my love for that thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because there's a lot of things. I mean, like the X-Men movies, that came out. There's a lot of, they're basically just reskinned 90s action films, But,
that's right.
But you can still look at them and say, oh, well, they did this good, they did this good, well, and I'm a fan of them. While still being objective and saying they're definitely not the best thing in the world, Not a lot of people can do that.
That's right. No, they can't. But, and on the same token, like, when you go on the flip side, where when you criticize something, it's not because you just want to criticize it. It's just that there isn't enough good in there to redeem what was the overwhelming bad. I mean, if you want to, just go back to the dead horse that is the Last Jedi. I mean, you can accuse people, oh, you're just being overcritical and stuff. But I've heard it once that what makes something bad isn't that it has bad things. It's the absence of anything that's good, or the lack of anything that's good. So that just makes it even worse, because even say The Room is an objectively bad film, but there are redeeming qualities in it, enough redeeming qualities in it that it can be it can be watched in an entertaining way on a completely different level.
Right.
But with Ryan Johnson's film, there isn't enough in that movie that was good,
right,
to redeem it from the flaws that it has.
Like, I can say, objectively, I'm not afraid to say this. Like, the visuals, a lot of the visuals were really nice. I liked a lot of the visuals.
Oh, that was great.
Amazing.
It was filmed very well. Like a lot, especially the use of the color.
Oh, for sure. Like the red.
Color red.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, the reds, especially on in the last act with the on the Salt Planet.
Oh yeah.
With like the streaks of red through the salt. That was great imagery.
Oh, for sure.
But again, when we go back to like Wreck-It Ralph 2, it falls flat in the execution and delivery of the story.
Yeah, it's like, you made a good world. Good job with that, but
that's funny, and it had the same issues I have with Wreck-It Ralph 2. It's a portrayal it betrays what's been established about certain characters.
Yeah, exactly. And bring it even more back to the Treasure Planet Atlantis kind of thing. It's also the idea of a filmmaker wanting to subvert expectations and avoid classic tropes of something, much to the detriment of that thing. You know, instead of just trying to tell a story and possibly subverting some things here and there, but not being afraid to retread old things, you know? It does that same thing. Look at this. We had a theme without meaning to have a theme. Look at that.
I never thought that we'd come back full circle.
We did.
Because to be honest, I wasn't even sure we'd be able to get that much out of that little that thought I had about those two films.
But we did it. I think this is a good place to end.
But I think to finish off.
Right, yeah. Close out.
Yeah, but to finish off, close out, they are still both great films. I'll love those films.
Treasure Planet and Atlantis.
You know, as Treasure Planet and Atlantis, they are excellent films. I mean, my son loves Treasure Planet.
Right.
And I just love the art style and the atmosphere set in Atlantis. But they could have been so much more if the filmmakers weren't so scared about retreading earlier ground that Disney might have gone. Because I reckon that's the thing that separated those two films from greatness and being more loved than they are right now. I mean, they are still loved films, but they're not. There's a difference between being good and being great, and that's the difference.
The hipsters, man, we're gonna get some hipster hate like crazy.
Oh, I know. The first film, our first discussion was defending Frozen, which is gonna get them mad, and now we're ragging on the two films that they keep bringing up.
And why don't they do a live-action remake of Treasure Planet and Atlantis? I guarantee if they actually did that, people would complain.
Yeah, I think it'd be worse.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can do that in live action.
I don't. You couldn't do those two. I mean, especially with Atlantis. I mean, they're just gonna call it steampunk Pocahontas.
Right. And going back to animation too, I think there's a special quality to the animation in Treasure Planet. It was first kind of used in Tarzan, where you have the roller coaster tree swing thing. There was CGI mixed with 2D animation, and they really pushed with Treasure Planet.
Yeah, I think it was called Canvas.
Canvas.
Canvas was the software.
Right. Yeah. Where they would create a world, a rough outline of a place or a world or something like that, with the simple geometric shapes, and then the artist would render over that with the characters or extra details and stuff. And Treasure Planet really leaned into that, So we're not hating on Treasure Planet or Atlantis. Both of those are really good. We're just saying could have been better. But with that, I think we should kind of close out. Just want to say
definitely.
Subscribe to my channel, which is Full-Time Fans. I also plan to release this podcast, of course, in its entirety, but I think it would also be interesting to chop it up into digestible bites, perhaps, of some of the themes we did, and kind of make a full video essay out of that, and so people can digest it like that, and maybe that'll give us some more content on the channel, because we've been pretty lacking over here, and that's just because of where me and my co-host are kind of at in our lives, but I think that would be a fun way to do that. And also, check out, as we said before, where can we find you for your blog?
So the blog is by Grabthar's Hammer, and not just another review blog. You can find it on Facebook, and I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks I'll find a decent blogging place that's relatively affordable for me, but if you can find me on the Facebook blog, do like and follow, Give me your thoughts on my not just my reviews but my writing.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
Really, I'm genuinely interested in if people are interested in the way how I talk about these films. So yeah, head on over there and give me a
All
like.
right. Well, with that, I think we're gonna wrap up. As always, we're your friends, not your boss. Later. All right.
See you later.
Okay. I thought that went well. That went a lot better than our other one.
Yeah, well, you know,